You know, Lee, people who've been watching Crowdsource the Truth for a while, they know that you and I have known each other and we've been friends for very close to 30 years. You're one of the very first people that I interviewed when I started Crowdsource the Truth, and we've been talking forever about doing some kind of show that's going to focus on technology and the merger of media and technology and this whole Donald Trump assassination attempt. You know, there's been so much work going on. John has been joining and doing so many shows. John, welcome to the show tonight. Lee, guys, how you doing?
I'm great, Jason. How are you, John?
Doing great. Great to see you both.
Yeah, I know how Jason is, who we were talking before.
Yeah.
But I've got Jason is nerdy, if I may say so. That's how
exactly.
he is.
Well, this is how you and I initially met, Lee, is our mutual interest in digital technology and this kind of media landscape that's permeated everything now. And I think we have never had an event quite on the scale of what just happened with the Donald Trump assassination event, in that so many people are participating in recording it and, you know, wanting to learn more and understand what is going on with the event. And what I hope we can achieve with this show is to help people understand how to evaluate media that they encounter on the internet, to know if they're dealing with a high quality element that they can actually determine something from. Just help people understand what we're looking at and even share this material more effectively. John, you've been doing a lot of work with a 3D artist who's created an asset. Lee and I were talking before the show about some stuff we're going to do with Unreal Engine. And again, this is for people who are regular Crowdsource the Truth viewers. We might get to some technical stuff at times in this show. And this is, you know, I'm saying every Thursday now, moving forward with Lee, and when John participates with us in doing this four-dimensional investigation, we're going to touch on some areas that will be perhaps more technical. And the hope is to educate the existing audience and bring in a new audience. Lee, I know you had a lot of ideas that you wanted to talk about and kick around. Where do you guys want to begin with all this?
So let me ask John, first off, what's new in the investigation? So we get that, now out of the way, but...
No, we're going to spend a lot of time on that, actually, particularly during the sponsor segment. And thank you for reminding me, Lee. People can sponsor everybody who's on this show. People can sponsor Lee by going to patreon.com/Stranahan. And I hope that people will do that. Of course, you can sponsor John on subscribestar.com/IamJohnCullen, patreon.com/IamJohnCullen, and you can sponsor Crowdsource the Truth on odyssey.com/@Crowdsource the Truth, and all these other channels. John, there's been so much going on in the investigation. Start us off, and we'll get in depth on the sponsor show. What's cooking with you?
Kind of an investigation roundup.
Yeah.
So the round that was fired that missed the snipers on the northern roof, the cover boy snipers, the ones who got all the press, that continues to be a burning issue, right? So that round seems to be the round that hits that back railing, and it doesn't come from the rooftop shooter's location. And this is why the model becomes so important. One of the things that we're going to look at when we get to the patron-only portion of the show, Jason, is somebody that we call the lucky man. And the lucky man is a man who's standing in the vicinity of David Dutch and James Coperhaven. And he's standing in the vicinity of them such that if the shot came from the rooftop and hit the railing, it would have had to have gone through the lucky man. So we're going to see this. That's the whole point. This is why we do these models, right? So when we look at how everything lines up, we have the lucky man's position in the model. We have Coperhaven in the model. We have David Dutch in the model. We have Corey Comparatori in the model. And we have both the shooter's position on the rooftop and the potential shooter in the window below, all modeled out. Now, right now, we're working on putting in the fence and trying to figure out the terrain undulations that we have right now from Google are not as accurate as we would have if we had a surveyor go out there.
Wow.
And so one of the guys who follows
Wait,
me
wait one
is a
second, John. What did you
yeah,
say? If we had a what?
Surveyor.
a surveyor go out and take a survey. So
Okay.
one of the guys who follows me is a surveyor, and
Wow.
he's got all the like all the high-end Leica gear,
That's great.
yeah. So when the time comes, Lee, we'll be able to replace our, plus or minus 1 inch ground plane thing with something that's, that you could build off of. So we've got people already on board who are surveyors.
Amazing.
And when the time comes, we'll get the site surveyed. But what we're working with now is already a 3D undulating terrain model of the site. So we're already working with that. But the whole point here is that these assets can be updated so that
Yeah.
if you get a better terrain model and you're like, oh my God, look what we got from the U.S. Geological Survey, and they just did it in 2022. Boom, we switch that one in for the one that we're currently using. So this is the straw man method that we use for our hypotheses. We also get to use for the model. If it turns out that we find out that Copenhagen was actually 6 inches more to the left, we'll move Copenhagen 6 inches more to the left. I mean, that's how it works. So right now, the model's kind of coming together. When we get to the patron-only portion of the show, I'll walk you guys through. I'll show you, Lee, where the cameras are, where the people are, what the trajectories look like. But it's ugly, right? Meaning it's plain. There's no fancy. It doesn't look like Heinrich stuff. We didn't
Flat
make
shaded.
it pretty.
Yeah.
Right. So everything. The idea is let's see if we can get these angles right first, and then layering in the textures, the shading, all that stuff. That's you. I don't know. We don't need that now, or that's not my focus. I'm trying to get the.
Let me back you up for a
like
second, John, because even further back on this, I think it's important that we start to get some organizational stuff together in our minds. Because in other words,
Right.
I think a lot of people don't know, like this model that you're talking about, is it hosted somewhere? Can people look at it, add things to it, how all that works? We still really need to kind of organize that. And Lee and I have been having a discussion about, creating a website for this project. I think it would be nice if there was the ability for, like I was speaking with Mia and Eric, and they've got some video that they've shot, but they don't have like a WeTransfer account or some way to send large files. It would be nice if we set up either our own website, or maybe we talk to Dugan about setting something up, or just even get like a Mega Upload or Google Drive or whatever, so that everybody can kind of upload things. And like you were saying, there's different versions. I also want to spend a little time during the sponsor exclusive segment.
Let me say one thing about what
Before we do that,
said.
Lee, let me just finish this thought. I want to spend a little time when we get to the sponsor exclusive segment, because people are asking about this, looking at these at least 2 different versions of this new Butler County PD body camera footage came out that's exhibiting some really bizarre technical defects that I want to talk about. So I just want to let everybody know that that's what this show is going to be about. Everybody who's used to hearing us talk about politics and investigations and government cover-ups and stuff like that, this is going to be a much more technical show. And I don't mean to say that as like, hey, don't watch and you'll be bored and all this. I'm saying it's going to be a departure, I hope in a very interesting way. And for people who saw me speaking to Doug yesterday, Doug Mills, I think they started to understand how having a greater technical understanding of some of these tools that we all use, your camera and your phone and stuff like that. If you find yourself at some event where news is breaking, we want to help empower people to understand how to use the things they already have to get the best quality results when they want to participate in this kind of crowdsourced investigation.
And so I'll say also, there's going to be parts that are going to be not technical at all. Because I talked to you about this, Jason, dealing with the psychology going on here, the 5D, I may call it.
I like that.
But I don't know what the D's for. Duh.
Fifth
I'm not
dimension.
Sure. But I want to mention one thing based on what John was saying. Talking about the ground plane. So the basic thing when you're trying to get a model of any real place is called DAM data. The basics is crude, but DM data stands for Digital Elevation Model, and the USGA publishes it. You can look up what's the ground like under your house. Just look up your latitude and longitude, and you can find the DM data. But the problem is, like John's getting at, that is very broad. It's not down to the inch or anything. I think it shows, like, I think it's a yard or something like that. So if you're trying to do a mountain range, let's say, and the DM data is very
That's
important.
good. Yeah.
But as we do, I'll use a big word, try to say it because I've had strokes. We're doing iterations. So what we're talking about is iterations of this, starting with the DM data, crude, and then we get down to where an inch matters. Because if there's a indent in the ground at one point, and the person was standing in that, there was a 1-inch indent, it wouldn't show up on the DM data, but it would make a difference in the stuff we're talking about.
Right.
So that's why I'll use another big word. I'll try to say it: versioning. So versioning, not virgining. Get your mind together, Jason.
Right.
Versioning is the process of saying, okay, this is 1.0, and this is 1.1, and this is 1.2, and saying 1.0 is, let's say, the DM data version. 1.2 is the LiDAR version. So keeping track of all that stuff is very important because, again, we're dealing, the 3D, it's basic, but the 3D models aren't real. That's all I'm trying to say. And they're a model. So because of that, they're already one step away. They're a representation in some senses. And the closer we can get to what's real, like if we know that the current model is down to a detail of 1 inch, that's good. And we should know that. So the organization stuff Jason's talking about is we're trying to develop a website that will be able to have, you can go to a version, VERSION. See, again, this word not being able to talk is a problem. But you can go to a version that's appropriate. Does that make sense, Jason?
It's importantly, yeah, because as the job gets bigger, as the project grows, knowing which version has what in it, it's very easy for these things to get out of control. When we used to manage big animation projects at 21st Century 3D, there's so many assets to a project: the textures, the models, the animation files, the rendered files. And in this, we're going to have a similar thing, a lot of different kind of assets. And I also, we want to be able to use the 3D assets with some real world assets. Like, in other words, we saw how Heinrich integrated the sound from the actual thing and then drove the animation playback from the sound. That's going to be important. And I do want to spend some time during the sponsor exclusive segment, particularly when we look at these body cam videos, talking about the fourth dimension aspect of this investigation, the time. I think it's becoming increasingly important. And it's really funny because I did a little bit of my own visual effects project earlier this week, Lee. I don't know if you ever really interacted with David Hawkins very much when he used to be on the show, but I made an artificial intelligence version of David to help me figure out an aspect of the case, and we got some really good information out of it. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to watch this interview, or if the people watching right now have had a chance to see this interview I did with Doug Mills, but he revealed to us in that interview the contact sheet from his, Adobe Lightroom workspace there. And what we got from that, Lee, this was really important evidence that just came to us almost by accident. He showed us the contact sheet, and what was visible was the time that each photo was taken with incredible precision, because this camera, it's an internet network node. It goes online with Wi-Fi. And so when he snapped this picture, it was according to the atomic clock run by the Navy, 6:10 and 34 seconds. And look, Trump has already hit the deck. CBS told us 6:11 and 33 seconds the first shot was fired. And that record of time that CBS gave us, it just stuck in my brain as being excessively precise like unnecessarily precise. Who tells you something happened at 6:11 and 33 seconds? But now we find that not only did that not happen, it's pretty relevant because we've got all these videos coming out that don't have sound, that seem to want to mess with this fourth dimension of time, because we're very concerned about where this unknown Secret Service agent inside American Glass Research, where he might have been at 6:10 and 41 seconds, when his buddy Tedeschi here is outside, and now thanks to the body camera footage, we know at that moment he's boosting this guy up to the roof. John, help people understand, if you could, how does this new information change your understanding of the events?
Well, I think it's pretty big. So we've got Tedeschi outdoors. So this is Tedeschi, and this is the guy that we saw walking down the hall with Sketchy Guy 18 minutes after the shooting.
Right.
And he looked, very uncomfortable, kind of like, he saw a ghost, or he saw something he shouldn't have seen, or he did something he didn't want to do, or he didn't get something done that he was supposed to get done, or something like that. He just looked weird. And we had a guest on the show, Lee. We had an eyewitness who was at the event, who is a local, and said, "Oh, that's Tedeschi? That jerk?" And it's like, oh, this guy's like an abusive, arrogant guy that in the town, kind of everybody knows him as this is the cop you don't want to screw around with. He kind of busts everybody's back about everything. So seeing him outdoors, helping boost another guy up, the other guy never gets the rooftop shooter on the body cam. And so it's like much ado about something, I guess, and then he falls off the roof. But it does look like he cut his hand. So I have to retract the statement that I said. I said the guy who cut his hand is the shooter. I thought the guy who cut his hand on the glass, and it was bad because they talked about him needing stitches. We see this guy looking at his hand on the body camera, and it doesn't look like he needs stitches. I mean, what a wuss. I mean, come on. Cut his hand a little bit. Big deal. It's like, I wasn't that, and there's blood. Maybe there's two people. Maybe this guy cut his hand and somebody else is really bleeding in the bathroom. I don't know, because they talked about the bathroom having blood in it. But the fact we never see Sketchy Guy, we don't see Sketchy Guy here. We see him later in Unsteady Dave's footage kicking Dave's phone.
Right.
But in all of this stuff, it's like, well, where's Sketchy Guy? Shouldn't he be outside helping some other guy up on the roof? Shouldn't he have an AR-15 on his shoulder? Where is he? What's he doing?
Well, let me ask you maybe a little bit of a pointed question. Now that we've got our buddy Tedeschi outside boosting that guy up, I mean, I'm leading the witness here, but it suggests to me that he's outside while perhaps Agent Sketchy is inside, and Tedeschi is kind of making sure all these cops are kind of occupied outside, boosting them up on the roof. This guy could be inside the building, the doors are locked, he's doing anything at all.
I'll give Tedeschi the benefit of the doubt and assume he doesn't know anything until he sees what he's not supposed to see. I'll give him, I think if this was planned and we got multiple shooters the way we think we do, or the way I think we do, I don't want to put words in your mouths, but I don't know that they kind of cut in the Butler PD on this. I think that Butler PD may have seen a thing or two that they weren't supposed to see.
But wouldn't they need one inside man, John? Somebody?
So that's the stuff that you're good at and I'm naive about. So you know all that stuff, and I'm like, oh, really? I'm naive. I'm like,
JTTF?
Well, there you go. So now you got me on your side of the seesaw. So for those of you who don't know the JTTF play, it's something that I guess Valerie Caproni came up with 20-something years ago, which is where the FBI... No?
It was NYPD and the, I forget who the SAC in New York was at the time, but it started just as a task force in 1980. And the interesting thing is, it was like right before Lee, what was that Westchester Weather Underground, the Brinks job? It was the guy, Chesa Boudin's... Yeah, that Chesa Boudin's father and mother shot up the bank, and that was
the Brinks. Yeah, was Brinks show.
81. So it was right after they created the JTTF, but now it's basically part of every single local law
You
enforcement
taught us
agency.
about Valerie Caproni going out to Oregon to convince the police department out there to get on board. And basically, it was the FBI going out to these local police departments saying, look, we're going to deputize you guys. We're going to send you Daniel Defense AR-15s, top of the line DDM4 version 7 stuff, $2,500 AR-15s. We're going to send you the Schmidt and Bender scopes. We're going to send you the Bearcats. We're going to send you new body armor. Everybody's going to get Wilcox Raptors. It's like, you want to play, or do you want to? You don't want to be part of the Joint Terrorism Task Force? You don't want the jackets? You guys, you sure? You don't want the ones that say FBI JTTF on them in Butler, Pennsylvania? You ever wonder where that Bearcat came from? How much is a Bearcat? It's like $1 million. The Butler PD bought a Bearcat? I don't think so. I think you might be right. JTTF. Wow.
Well, and
Wow.
remember when they had the acting director, Rowe, in Congress, he said that the Secret Service is not part of the IC, the intelligence community. So that would mean if there was a JTTF officer in the Butler PD who was answering to the FBI, he would arguably have certainly intelligence that Secret Service might not have. It's an interesting, I mean, I'm not saying we are not implicating any of these officers in anything. We don't know. For all we know, Tedeschi is doing exactly everything he needs to do. It's just curious, the timing and the fact that this time seems to have shifted. Lee, what do you think about that? CBS reporting such a precise but inaccurate time.
Well, so this is a good way to get into other thing I want to talk about, the psychology. So here's where we are, it seems to me. It's a very interesting situation compared to, let's say, JFK. Okay. The technology we have, cameras, and there's so much more data right now, like a million times more, just because there's cameras, movie cameras were hard to come by in 63, right? So now everyone's got a high def camera on their pocket, right? So there's more data than ever. But I will say this, we could have the most perfect data in the world, and you could have the clearest evidence in the world. And here's what's interesting. Some people would still not believe it. And this is a huge, right. I really want to point this out because I've been doing research for my Ukraine book. I've been researching stuff like Operation Gladio or Operation, let's take Northwoods. More people know about that. Jason, you know about Northwoods, right?
Yes.
John, do you know about Northwoods?
Yes, absolutely.
So Northwoods is the kind of thing, not conspiracy theory, absolute fact. Everyone admits that document is true. But a lot of people, because like think about it, you could go read Northwoods right now. Now, why is Northwoods not taught in schools? I'm going to point out, I think I know why. And it's
why? Too crazy, too much like 9/11.
No, and also, but what does it say about our government? What does it say about
nuts.
everything
They're
you've been brought
psychos.
up to believe?
They're liars.
Right. And it says a number of things that could actually drive some people nuts. I'm just saying, in a crazy world right now, like we live in, if you knew for sure, and Northwoods actually does prove it, that the government is willing to kill people, the people in the high places in the government were willing to kill people. They had a plan that would have meant the deaths of thousands of people on a false flag attack. You can't say, given Northwoods, that it's not possible. So if people right now are going, okay, well, gee, why would the government? Someone died in this. You know, Corey died.
Right.
So the thing, this government is capable of anything. I'm not saying that means they did anything. I'm saying there's no saying, well, this government, because also look at what happened after Northwoods. Remember all the indictments? Remember all the arrests?
Zero.
No, you see what I'm saying? There were no indictments. No one was held responsible. In fact, the guy, Lehman Levenster, the guy who came up with the plan, was head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Okay. And afterwards, He wasn't sent to prison. He wasn't fined. He joined NATO as Supreme Commander of NATO. So he got a peripheral kind of a promotion in a way. Would you say, is
Probably a
that fair?
raise, easier job, more money.
Right. And so what I'm saying is no one's held accountable. So right now, the data Jason, John, and I are trying to put together, and again, John's doing the heavy lifting. So hats off to him. There you go, John.
Not really. No, it's not. I'm not doing the work.
No, but you know what I'm saying.
I'm working with the guy. The guy I'm working with, I'm going to get you on a Zoom call so that you two can start, because I've kind of outlasted my usefulness here. You guys will see when we get to the patron only portion of the show. We might want to just give people a peek, Jason, of what they're going to see when we get to patrons. So if you guys aren't yet patrons, I want them to get a sense of what we are going to cover, because it's pretty extensive. Is that okay if I show them a peek?
I'm not sure what'll happen with the way that I've got this set up, but try it and we'll see. Something will happen, I think.
All right, let's see.
Yeah, there we go.
All right. So what we're going to be looking at when we get to the patron-only portion of the show are the trajectories from the rooftop versus the trajectories from the window versus where the president was standing or where Trump was standing. And then we have Copenhagen, we have David Dutch, we have the lucky guy in the corner, we've got Corey Comparatori. So we'll be looking at all these trajectories and the trajectory that goes down that back row that may have just missed the snipers that were on the roof. So this is the reason why modeling all this stuff is so important, is so we can figure out where was the shooter. And if the shooter's in certain locations, well, that means that you've got people here that would have been shot. And that's what we call the lucky guy. So we'll be taking a look.
Story, John, the second story window of American Blast Research, isn't that a possible location as well?
Well, the issue here is it's a big enough stretch just to get to the rooftop shooter on the crack thump data. When we get to the second story in those windows, it's even further. Yeah. I'll be doing some testing. So I was able to get my hands on some of the slowest 223 ammo out there, which is the 77 grain ammo. And I just got my hands on some. So I'm going to go do some testing to see what the crack thump is at the distance that the kid on the roof is from the podium with the slowest possible 223 ammunition available, so that we'll have some benchmark data to go by. In other words, with the slowest available stuff that you can get, what is the crack thump from the rooftop's location, the rooftop shooter distance to the podium, and then we can measure the distance to the windows up top if you want to know, and I'll just do it, and then we'll know that, we'll know what it is.
Again, this whole thing is going to be an like an exercise along the lines of what you're describing. I anticipate will lead to a discovery of all kinds of things that we don't know. Like, this is work that could go on for months and even longer. And so I think what we want to do with this show is to just sort of like, initially at the outset here, organize the ideas, wrap our heads around exactly what it's going to be. You're exchanging ideas here with Lee, connect Lee up with the guy who's got the 3D model. Maybe Lee is going to be able to give this guy some insights in what we can do to get this into Unreal Engine, and then we can create some location where maybe every week when people come to watch the show, or any day that you want to go look at it, whether it's a website or some asset hosted at that website you showed us last time, Lee. I forget the name of it right now. What was that called?
What's that?
The website. Sketchfab. Yeah, something hosted there or anything like that. I mean, we're just in the early stages now. So talking about all these ideas, figuring it all out. The other thing is, John, you did a great mega sync cut that you released on YouTube and on Twitter. And if people aren't following John on Twitter, I want to make sure everybody knows they can find him there at I_am_John Cullen. And you can follow Lee at Stranahan. And people can follow me on Twitter. There's so much going on, on X, People can follow us all on there. But basically, your mega cut inspired me, John. And what I'm going to do, hopefully tomorrow or perhaps Saturday, is to create a sort of a more accessible, I guess I would call it, version of a mega cut. Yours was cool because it was all like a mosaic of videos where you've synchronized them, and then we can kind of see what's happening in different locations in the different videos. But for certain types of analysis, the screen got a little crowded and the sound becomes a bit of a cacophony. So what I wanted to do was, I'm going to stack up all those videos, and as we're getting more videos, including this body cam and stuff, I want to make a multi-cam project in Adobe Premiere. And what that is going to do is it's going to allow us to mix and match. So we could maybe take the video from over here and output with audio from over here. And this would just be a testing tool to, because you have perhaps a need to know what something sounds like when a camera is close to the glass building versus close to the president. And just having that ability to organize these video and audio files and compare them to each other. Because we really don't have any way. Lee, you were talking about the ground elevation and whatever. That's going to be a very difficult thing to make as accurate as possible. And likewise, these elements that we have, videos, photographs, it's difficult to verify them and sort of authenticate them with the events as they actually occurred. So the best thing that we can really do is compare them to each other. If we have 7 videos and certain key points in audio line up in 6 of them and not in 1, it's maybe good to have information that there's something wrong with that one. So we're going to start right. So we're going to start.
In fact, you were talking about Heinrich, and I was curious to see his alignments, to see what do we have that's the same, and what do we have that's not. Because I want to see what he's got. I'm like, oh wow, he put the he's got the tree, he's got this, right? So I'm looking to see what did he do that we haven't yet done, and what might he have miscalculated. So I'm eager to get the library aspect of this, or the layer part of this, where we'll be able to layer in different contributors' content on top of the base model. And we're trying to get this base as close as we can. When we get to the patron-only portion, I'll show you guys a little bit more of the detail here. But when Lee and the people who follow Lee on the Unreal stuff are able to start applying all the Unreal stuff to this, it's going to be wild. It's going to be wild.
And also, one of the things we'll be able to do, and I'm going to recommend Oculus Rift 2 as the
Quest
thing I think people will be able to use. Sorry, Quest 2, because it's very affordable. Is do a VR version where you can put yourself in a spot and look around, and the audio and picture will change. What do you think about that, Jason?
I think it's great, and I think all of these things will definitely be possible, but like anything, we got to build this one brick at a time. So we're going to break right now, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. People are going to be able to join us for this sponsor-exclusive segment. We're going to really dig into a lot of this content, the 3D model that John has. I want to show people some very specific stuff about these body camera videos. We're going to get some reactions from John. We're going to talk about how these videos interact with other videos that we've seen, and Lee, we're going to go to some of the art of cinema that Fox News or perhaps the police are trying their hands, a little bit of editing. We're going to take a look at that. We'll be right back, everybody. Please become a sponsor if you aren't already, and a huge thank you to everybody who is sponsoring the show.